All right. And here we go for night 2 of the Republican National Convention. The party is in full swing, and they call this the Senate Power Hour. And for as much as the media likes to talk about presidency, control of the White House, the next hour on stage is a casting call for Republicans trying to take control of the United States Senate. And when it comes to the Supreme Court, the U.S. Senate is at least half the ball game, if not the whole ball game. With that, Farrah's show on television is tonight, live from the RNC in Milwaukee. And Republicans want America tonight to compare and contrast. We've heard it a bunch of times already from the stage. Life under Joe Biden versus life under Donald Trump. That's the argument. Donald Trump's walkout in primetime last night electrified the arena. Coming out to Lee Greenwood's God Bless the USA, his walkout song at the rallies. Republicans will use tonight's convention to paint America as an unsafe nation with a wide open border. We've already seen videos about that. Conventions are about momentum, trying to push the candidates out almost like a catapult off an aircraft carrier. And former President Donald Trump is riding a tsunami right now. Probably no candidate coming out of conventions ever had more momentum than Donald Trump does right now. No one would ever think, 72 hours after an attempted assassination, Trump's convention is more looking like an inauguration party. There is something in the air here. Republicans perhaps not going to feel certain of victory, but they're pretty close to it. Throughout the next hour on the stage behind me are would-be Republican senators, all hoping to flip seats held by Democrats. Well, and the odds for Republicans look better and better as Trump surges and Biden continues to falter. In fact, Adam Schiff of California just warned that if Joe Biden stays on the ticket, Republicans keep up their momentum, it will be a wipeout for Democrats down the ballot. Governor Mike DeWine of Ohio could soon appoint a successor to fill J.D. Vance's Senate seat and see one of those Republicans knock off Democrat Sherrod Brown. Governor DeWine is with us now. It is good to see you, sir.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. You have had the unique ability to connect both with Donald Trump voters and with traditional conservative Republicans. That's what you started out as. What is the secret sauce that the MAGA contingency here needs to capture?
Well, first of all, this, as you say, this convention is very united. This party is united. I think the fact that the president reached out to 2 of his opponents and said, come speak here in the convention, I think that's a very, very positive thing. It tells you he wants to be inclusive. So we're coming out of here very, very much united. I think having J.D. Vance on the ticket is a big plus. I'm a little biased because I'm from Ohio.
And he's a friend of yours.
And he's a friend of mine.
I have not spent a lot of time with him, although this morning I was on my way to Walgreens. I had a headache and I needed a charging cable. And this is the guy I saw walking down the street. We're going to put the picture up. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning. I think I was as surprised as anybody would to see the next nominee, potentially the next vice president of the United States, walking down the street. He had a T-shirt on, surrounded by his Secret Service cadre. I'm going to get the picture up there in a minute. And his son had a shirt on that said, "I'm here for the hot dogs." What was interesting about the moment at Walgreens was inside Walgreens, the kids were pulling stuff off the shelves. The parents were trying to keep them on the shelves. I didn't want to interrupt or take any pictures, but it was a uniquely American and human moment. How does he bring that? What advices have you given to bring that here tonight? Or tomorrow?
Well, I'm not giving him any advice on that, but look, his story is an American story, and I think he can relate to a lot of families today. He had a very difficult childhood. We have families today across Ohio who have a member who has a mental health problem, others who have members who have an addiction problem. He's been through that in his family in different forms, and I think that real world experience is very, very significant. He came out of that background, but I think it makes him more compassionate. I think suffering trauma makes you a better person, and it's also, I think, has a real appeal. The average person can look at him and say, "Look, I see his background. Maybe that's some of the things that we've gone through. Maybe he's gone through some of the same things." That's helpful.
Relatable to people like
relatable.
I think it's fair to say the Republican Party has morphed into more of a populist party than when you were in the House and the Senate. And yet you've got two guys, one who's a real estate billionaire, the other who's a venture capitalist who went to Yale Law School at the top of the ticket. You now have billionaires and Elon Musk and others coming in behind in support. How do you square that circle of a populist party who wants to give tax cuts to the rich? What's that message have to be tomorrow?
I think the message for the average Ohioan is, we're better off. We were better off under Trump than we are today under Biden.
Well,
I think that relates to people. People are always ask themselves that question. How's this going to affect me? That's the natural human thing to do. How's it affect my family? That's the proper thing to say.
So as much as the Republican Party can make this, I hate to say this, but about the issues and about what Donald Trump will do rather than what Joe Biden has done.
We always vote our future. Past informs us.
Okay,
Past tells us what's worked, what hasn't, but we always vote our future. So, if people are in fact convinced of the fact that Trump will be better for them, they're going to vote for Trump.
All right, Kari Lake is right now up on the stage. She is the Senate candidate in Arizona. She lost the governor's race in Arizona. That is one of the two states that Decision Desk HQ has as a toss-up Senate seat. The other is the state of Ohio. Riddle me this. Donald Trump won Ohio in 2016 and won in 2020. But Sherrod Brown is now doing pretty well and is a toss-up in Ohio. That means you've got to reach farther across the aisle, yet this convention seems to be centering and, sort of centering down and doubling down on populist MAGA.
Look, Sherrod Brown's a difficult and tough candidate. He's very wily. He's very good. He's survived. He got there by beating me many years ago. So, I have a great deal of respect for his political skills. Bernie Moreno, our candidate, is going to be a great United States Senator. He's been outspent so far by Brown. Once I think he starts getting the resources, this race will be very, very close. I think you're going to see Donald Trump carry the state of Ohio he carried it the first time by 8, the second by 8. He's going to carry it by more than 8 this time. That's going to be very helpful in this Senate race. But if anyone's looking for a race to invest, we can help. Certainly appreciate the help. We'll take the money.
You guys could use the cash.
Send Bernie the money. So.
All right. So you just said Donald Trump is going to win Ohio. You think he's
he's going to win. Sure.
You think he's going to win the presidency too? That means there is an open Senate seat. Have you given thought to who you might pick? Sure,
I've thought about it. It's become.
You want to give just between you and me?
Well, we could just share that secret.
Okay.
Right now. Yeah. Look, here's what I've said. The person I pick has got to be able to win a primary, win a general election. I served 12 years in the United States Senate. I think I know what it takes to be a good United States Senator, and that will play into this.
Play into the selection process.
Yes, but it also is going to, you got to have somebody who's willing to run again. I would appoint them for 2 years. They would run again in 2026. They would have to run again in 2028. That's tough. 4 straight years of running. We got to have somebody who's up to that challenge as well.
Is Vivek Ramaswamy up to it?
Look, we got a lot of people who would be good candidates. I kind of jokingly said yesterday, people said, you got a short list. I said, no, I don't even have a long list yet. So we're early on in this process. First, we got to win. We got to win the current Senate seat that's up.
For Americans who sit there and see Donald Trump, as we did last night, with a patch on his ear, and that was an emotional moment. I think for all of America, it should be to see sort of the fragility. And for 43 years, since Ronald Reagan was shot, we all kind of have allowed that to kind of go into the distant part of our minds, that a president can be assassinated. The vice president is one heartbeat away from the presidency. J.D. Vance is 39 years old. How is he, and how does he convince a skeptical America that he is not just another Sarah Palin?
I think when people watch him, I think when they listen to him debate, he'll debate the current vice president. They're going to be very impressed by him. He is exceedingly smart. He's overcome a great deal in his life. He is very well accomplished. He is extremely articulate. I think he does a great job expressing the Donald Trump program and the Donald Trump philosophy, and people will see that day after day.
And let me give you one different view of this. There's been a thought that Donald Trump should put the vice president, that if there's a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House, that they would view the vice president as a less good option than Donald Trump because of a possible impeachment. You're laughing. I feel like I'm onto something.
Oh no, that's about 5 chess plays away. I don't know.
You don't buy into that?
I don't buy that one. No. Look, I think Donald Trump did it because he likes him. He thinks he's articulate. He expresses what the opinions that Donald Trump wants to express and does it in a very, very good way.
All right. Governor, thank you very much. We appreciate the time. Good to be with you, Jim Jordan, also from Ohio. And when we come back, a look at exactly how does Donald Trump reach across to moderate Americans at a time when the numbers on the border and on crime are looking better for Joe Biden.
That's BS.
All right, welcome back to Wisconsin. We're going to talk to a guy from Ohio in just a minute. Crime and border security are the discussion topics for tonight. Republicans are tripling down on those issues specifically, levering messaging that America is an unsafe nation. And it polls very well. 6 in 10 Americans believe crime should be a top priority for Congress and the White House. 47% increase since President Biden first took office. This issue has become a major issue in America. Tonight, Republicans will hear from Michael Morin, whose sister Rachel died at the hands of an illegal immigrant last year. Madeline Brain will also speak. Her son, an Army veteran, was beaten and stabbed to death by an illegal immigrant in 2018. Congressman Jim Jordan, Republican from Ohio, chair of the Judiciary Committee, is with us. Also, I think it's fair to say one of Donald Trump's closest confidants in the House of Representatives. I assume you've talked to him since Saturday.
I actually have not spoke directly with the press. I left a message, talked to Dan Scavino, and then the last few days, I felt like maybe this is better to let President Trump talk with his family and others, and me not call in. So I'll call him, I'm sure, sometime later this week.
Understandable and thoughtful on your part. He said he has ripped up his speech since Saturday night. What does he have to capture? Not to capture this room, which clearly he has the attention and adulation of.
Sure does.
But to reintroduce himself to America. And I'm thinking specifically about the voters in Ohio who are going to vote for Donald Trump for president and Sherrod Brown for senator.
I think the president said he wants a more unifying speech. And as you said, he's changed what he had planned to his planned remarks, his planned speech. I don't know how that translates into in what he says and how he does it, but I do know this: I'm sure it'll be great. I've been to many of his rallies, many of his speeches.
That's a real point. You say he wants a more unifying speech. You can't just say I want a more unifying. It actually has to translate into words. What are those words?
Yeah, I don't know, but
what would you advise him those should be?
I think the tone he took after some of the things he put out on Truth Social. You saw what Melania, the former First Lady, what she said. I think that is a tone that resonates with all Americans. And I think what happened on Saturday, his response to the tragic situation, the firefighter and what he did to protect his daughter and his wife, but the response from President Trump, I think, was so American, so leadership literally under fire,
There's the picture.
I think it was this defiant, this charisma, this energy that President Trump has, I think is characteristic of our country and the spirit of Americans. So I think that, coupled with then the tone that we saw on Sunday from him and the First Lady, I think that's how the speech, what that means in words, I'm not sure, but I'm sure he'll capture it. He does a great job every time he speaks.
This just coming out in the past couple of minutes on Truth Social from the former president. The radical left Democrats are desperately trying to play the ref by calling for an illegal and unconstitutional attack on our sacred United States Supreme Court. The reason these communists are so despondent is that their unlawful witch hunts are failing everywhere. The Democrats are attempting to interfere in the presidential election and destroy our justice system. He's responding to a Washington Post report. Biden set to announce support for major Supreme Court changes, proposals for legislation to establish term limits for the justices and enforceable ethics codes, possibly also a constitutional amendment limiting presidential immunity. Rather than talk about the proposal, let's talk about President Trump's response. That's not exactly a unifying and uplifting message.
Well, but I think Americans know the Democrats have been the party that's for packing the court, adding justice to the court so they can take it back. I think Americans instinctively disagree with that, disagree with this term limits concept. They don't like the decisions that have come down, but the way our system works is the president gets to nominate, the Senate confirms, they're on the court, and they make the decisions. We've got a number of great decisions from this court over the last few years. I think this is sort of the sour grapes on the part of the Democrats, and I don't think it'll fly. I'm certainly not for it. I don't think the Judiciary Committee members are for it. I don't see it happening.
Proposing constitutional amendments are a little bit like saying you're going to search for unicorns. It's great if it happens, but it never does. You mentioned how much you are looking forward to having J.D. Vance as the Vice President of the United States, a guy you know very well. And he has some very different policy proposals and policy viewpoints I think we could both agree on than, say, a Ronald Reagan, traditional conservative Republican. Chuck Todd on NBC had his view of those. Take a listen.
The modern version of conservatism, Chris, that you and I grew up with, that began with Eisenhower, it's time of death, right? Basically when Donald Trump came down the escalator. I mean, look, J.D. Vance and the Teamsters president last night, this is an ideology that would have been very comfortable in the Democratic Party of Walter Mondale in 1984.
It's wild just to hear you say that out loud.
When it comes to trade policy, when it comes to fiscal policy, when it comes to not dealing with Social Security, Medicare, and out-of-control spending and a budget deficit, is Chuck Todd really that wrong?
Well, I think what President Trump has done is the Republican Party is now where I think we always should have been. We are a populist party rooted in conservative principle. And I think that second part is really important, rooted in conservative principle. But I think this is why President Trump won Ohio by 8.5, both in 2016 and 2020. It's that appeal to working class, middle class. We now have a Republican who represents Youngstown, Ohio. That didn't happen 30, 40 years ago. No chance of that. So this appeal, my dad was a union worker for General Motors. He is a diehard Republican. He switched with Ronald Reagan and is a strong, super strong Trump supporter. So I think that dynamic is good for our party. JD represents that. Plus, what I really like is he's lived the American dream. I mean, it is truly the American dream. It's the American success story, and I think that is something to be championed and something to take to the voters. I think he's a great pick.
I get the story, and it is a powerful one from J.D. Vance. You got Hillbilly Elegy. You got the movie that was made. We put up the picture I had of him and his wife walking to Walgreens. It's the all-American couple with a young family. It's a great story in every sense of the word. But Republicans keep telling me they want to make this election about policy, not personality. And you start putting major tariffs on goods coming from all over the world onto things coming to the United States. That raises prices. You start throwing out in mass deportation of illegal immigrants who are picking strawberries in California. That sends food prices up. You keep spending in the way we're spending, and at some point that's going to catch up with us. These are all Donald Trump and J.D. Vance's policies.
This election is about leadership. The American people saw that on Saturday with President Trump's reaction to the terrible situation that took place in Pennsylvania. And when it comes to policy, 4 simple ones that I think are in the front of mind for American voters. In 3 years and 7 months, we went from a secure border to no border. We went from safe streets to record crime. We went from $2 gas to $4 gas, and we went from stable prices to record inflation. That's what the American people are going to. That's what they're thinking about. That's what they're going to vote on. That's why President Trump is winning in every single swing state in this election.
All right. Republican voter views on J.D. Vance. Under a third of Republican voters believe that Vance was the best possible pick Trump could have made as his running mate in 2024 for the White House. Do you worry at all that, yes, he is a favorite of the base, he is a favorite of Donald Trump Jr.'s. He is not the guy to reach across the aisle, maybe not the working class voters in Youngstown, Ohio, but in suburban Cincinnati, this doesn't play as well.
I respectfully disagree. If you watched him on Meet the Press a week and a half ago, taking some tough questions from the mainstream media, I thought he was phenomenal, and his ability to handle tough questions on the pro-life issue, on trade, other policies that were brought up, I thought he was phenomenal. I think he can take his message across the board and help us get votes in the important, this election, most experts say, is Big Ten countries: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin,
right,
potentially Minnesota.
You take down the blue wall.
Right.
It's very difficult to see a path to victory for Joe Biden. You have been masterful at leading the Republican fight, if you will, playing defense for Donald Trump, now playing defense and a little bit of offense against Joe Biden. Adam Schiff, I think if he is our nominee, I think we will lose. We may very, very well lose the Senate, lose our chance to take back the House. He called it a wipeout if Democrats win. Republicans who did not really do very well and fought amongst themselves a lot the first 2 years of the Trump administration. You remember that. We were there together. This is going to be, correct me if I'm wrong, J.D. Vance is the vice president. This is going to be Trump on steroids compared to 2016 if elected.
Well, I think those policies I talked about, those issues, I think President Trump's going to come in, and if we take back the Senate, keep the House, and have President Trump and Vice President Vance, I think right away the first thing we do is deal with the border situation. We got to get our border under control. Second is we make sure the tax cuts don't expire. Third, we get into the energy. We do those things. Those are the first three.
You're not going to get a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. Are these Republicans that are going to be coming in willing to negotiate and compromise enough to actually get those things done and not fight amongst yourselves about them?
We better be, because the American people, that's exactly what they expect, and that's what's on the ballot on November 5th. So we had better work together. And I said this when I nominated Kevin McCarthy on January 3rd at the start of this Congress. Any differences that exist in the Republican Party are pretty darn small compared to the differences between Republicans and the hard left, which now controls the other party. So we had better figure out a way to work together and get things done for the benefit of American families. That's the attitude that I think definitely President Trump has, J.D. Vance has, and I think you will see that in the Congress and in the Senate if we take it back. And then second, I would add, we can use this process, this reconciliation process, to get a lot done. And that's a fancy word for avoiding the 60-vote hurdle and the threshold you have in the Senate. That's how you do things that make a difference for American families.
Congressman, good to see you as always, sir. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Nikki Haley's going to take the stage tonight. How Trump Republicans will make sure, and they're working on it to make sure, nobody hears her when we come back. Welcome back to Milwaukee, where Team Trump keeps talking about unity. A little break in the speeches of the Senate candidates. They talk about unity with the Republican Party, a unified America, yet they gave Nikki Haley, a woman who got 20% or so of the Republican primary vote, a Tuesday speaking spot, not Wednesday, not Thursday, and not one in prime time. George Will is with us now, NewsNation senior political contributor and Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist. Mr. Will, always a pleasure, sir. I guess that along with the choice of J.D. Vance, is a Donald Trump-controlled Republican Party that kind of doesn't have to care about Nikki Haley, right?
I think that's right, Leland. The Republican Party is more united today than it has been since any time since 1984, when they renominated President Reagan. Republicans, Leland, used to fight like cats and dogs. In 1912, it was former Republican President Teddy Roosevelt against incumbent President William Howard Taft. In 1964, it was Barry Goldwater Republicans against the Rockefeller Republicans. In 1992, it was the Pat Buchanan Republicans against the George Herbert Walker Bush Republicans. This year, the party is utterly homogenized. There is no dissent whatever to worry about.
All right, so that means that Team Trump doesn't really have to do much in terms of trying to reach over and across the aisle. This is the party now made in Trump's image. We compare what's going forward, right? This issue of unity as it relates to Joe Biden, who the revolt against him now is continuing. We understand there's a letter being put around among congressional Democrats saying they don't want an early roll call vote to nominate him. They want the party to wait until the DNC. He certainly is trying to figure out exactly what to do in terms of uniting his party against Donald Trump. And he's campaigning during traditionally the quiet period, which is the Republican Party. The opposing party takes the day off. Here he is with the NAACP in Las Vegas.
Just because we must lower the temperature in our politics is related to violence, it doesn't mean we should stop telling the truth. who you are, what you've done, what you'll do. That's fair game.
Are we now seeing the problem for Joe Biden that all he had in 2020 and has now is attacking Donald Trump? Fine, it worked in 2020. Is that why the Democratic Party is continuing to rumble, at least, about pushing him out?
I think that's right. They are worried about down-the-ballot Republicans. And when a president at the top of the ticket is seen as jeopardizing the jobs of all his colleagues, they're going to rebel. The simple truth is, Leland, that everything the president has tried, press conferences with Lester Holt of NBC and George Stephanopoulos of ABC, speeches here and there, everything he's tried since the June 27th debate has failed. It has failed to stop the steady drip of dissent from within his party. That's the person who has to worry about unity, because his party is leaving him. And I still maintain, Leland, there's a not at all negligible chance that he will not be the Democratic nominee.
And I think the one hope that Democrats had, I should say, because Democrats are divided out, that pro-Biden Democrats had, is that this week would be a reset for them, right? That the Republicans would somehow screw up, and never underestimate Republicans' ability to screw things up in this week, and therefore give a chance for Joe Biden to push forward once again with "I'm not Donald Trump." Biden versus Trump swing state polls. Arizona, he's down by 7. Wisconsin, he's down by 3. Nevada, he's down by 4. Georgia, he's down by 5. North Carolina, down by 4. Pennsylvania, down by 4. Michigan, he is tied. If you flipped this in 2016, Donald Trump was down by more than this in each one of these states at this time in 2016 and came back to win. Republicans who are now licking their chops about putting New Jersey and New York and Virginia in play, perhaps drinking a little bit too much of their own unity Kool-Aid here.
I think there's what Alan Greenspan once called irrational exuberance on the part of the Republicans right now. But let me suggest 3 other states. You mentioned just then the 7 usually identified as swing states: Virginia, New Hampshire, and New Mexico. What Mr. Biden really has to fear now are polls showing that some states that were assumed to not be movable by Trump starting to move in his direction. When that happens, you will see an absolute stampede for the exits on the part of Democrats.
And just so our viewers understand what is happening on stage, that is Baby Dog. That is the dog of Governor and Senate candidate Jim Justice, almost certain senator from West Virginia, who is the most popular political pet in the history of the country. And as you can see, when Baby Dog goes, a chair comes with Baby Dog to be available as there to look on to Governor Justice, its owner. George, you know, I never thought I would share a television screen with you and a bulldog at the Republican National Convention. Who says anything isn't possible? We'll see you soon, sir. Thank you.
You and I are getting second billing.
The dog is much more popular. The ratings will go up undoubtedly. Good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Glad to be with you.
New reporting says the Secret Service had actually stepped up security for Donald Trump before that event. And yet still, a 20-year-old with a long gun got close enough to wound President Trump and change presidential politics. There is going to be a lot of anger from the Republicans about the Secret Service. Why that's probably fair when we come back. The view looking from the convention hall back here into our broadcast booth, as you saw last night. Former President Trump was surrounded by Secret Service as he walked into the RNC in a way that most observers would say was a much tighter ring of security around him than normal, even for an event like this. The men and women protecting the president after he was shot on Saturday. Obviously, the ring has gotten tighter, but also now we're learning the Secret Service had already tightened security around Donald Trump because of a plot by Iran to assassinate the Republican nominee. The news comes as more questions swirl around the failure to prevent a bullet from hitting the former president. The Secret Service was supposed to brief the House Oversight Committee today. That did not happen. Republican South Carolina Representative, member of the House Oversight Committee, Nancy Mace, will be with us in a minute. We start, though, with Brian Enton with the latest on the investigation. And, Brian, everything we learn shows more breakdowns, leads to more questions, and is more concerning, right?
Yeah, it's right, Leland. I mean, we've been out here reporting for days, and every day we learn a new disturbing piece of information. We're in Butler Township, which is different than Butler, Pennsylvania. It's about 5 miles away. This is where the rally was. It's a rural area, and you've got Butler Township police here, Leland. And we have a source close to the police department that tells us that they were surprised that they got the job they did to secure the perimeter outside the rally when President Trump was here on Saturday. They only have about 12 full-time officers, and the source tells us that they expected that perhaps they would be doing traffic duty or something like that. They had several meetings with the Secret Service, and they were told no, they would actually be patrolling and securing the area where that building was that the shooter got up on top of the building, right outside the perimeter. They are also surprised, we are told, that the perimeter was not larger. Remember, the perimeter that the Secret Service was supposed to be securing did not actually encompass that area where the building was right there where the sniper was. So they were apparently caught off guard from what we've been told. They didn't expect that they would be at such a small department responsible for securing that area so close to the perimeter, Leland.
Wow. Ryan, as always, keep up the great reporting, the great work. We've heard President Trump has spoken with the widow of the fire chief who was killed there during the shooting. Republican South Carolina Congresswoman, member of the House Oversight Committee, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, with us on set. Nice to see you, ma'am, as always. Thank you. You were supposed to be briefed yesterday by the Secret Service. Correct. You were supposed to be briefed today by the Secret Service. I hate asking this question because I think it breeds things we shouldn't want to think about. Are they covering something up?
Well, we don't know yet because they haven't briefed us. And on Monday, we're supposed to have a public hearing with the director of the Secret Service. If she does not show up, I hope that we will subpoena her and force her hand and make her show up because they've delayed now for 2 days. The Homeland Security has taken over now and are speaking on behalf of the Secret Service. And the Oversight Committee has jurisdiction of the Secret Service. She should show up, answer our questions in a private briefing before we have a public hearing because we have more questions we have answers at this point today.
And there's an important distinction, right? Because the Secret Service is an agency which is supposed to be nonpartisan, led by a nonpartisan director. That's different than Homeland Security, which is inherently led by a presidential appointee, therefore partisan. The director has not spoken to you yet. She has spoken to Pierre Thomas of ABC. Take a listen.
That building in particular has a sloped roof at its highest point. And so, there's a safety factor that would be considered there that we wouldn't want to put somebody up on a sloped roof.
And that was her explanation for not posting either an agent or somebody from the local police on top of the sloped roof. Never mind that the counter sniper team that ended up shooting and killing the gunman was on a sloped roof. I'm still trying to figure out why there isn't a little bit more, why this is not being treated with a little bit more gravitas and urgency by the leadership of the Secret Service.
Right, and also it's how did he get on the roof? I heard today that there was a ladder involved. How did no one see this? We've seen in the man on the street interviews where people were notifying the law enforcement, hey, there's a guy with a gun, and no one did anything. We found out yesterday that that building wasn't even swept. No one swept the building, and yet it was a staging location for some of the law enforcement officers who were on site.
It's interesting. We're learning more from the reporting there, from Brian Enton's reporting, than we are from the Secret Service. There's a lot of anger, I think, in this room about what happened. And I was in the elevator last night at one of the hotels with Secret Service agents coming off duty. And I looked at him, I said, thanks for being here. You guys are doing a great job. And his face just dropped. And you could just see the emotion after being away from their families for months, in the hot weather, the campaign tempo, which is hard on them. And now this, I think, has crushed a lot of them. How do we separate valid criticism from the Secret Service director and the agency from the line agents?
Well, it's all about really facts and not fiction, getting all the facts, not speculating. And we won't know all of the facts until the director comes in and answers our questions. That's step number one. Number two, our local law enforcement, federal law enforcement officers, as you say, they take weeks and months away from families during the course of their career in any given year. They're putting their lives on their line every single day. We should not be attacking those individuals who are on the front lines right now. This is a leadership failure. It's a massive agency failure. We're going to get to the bottom of it on oversight if she ever shows up.
Well, interestingly enough, it seems like President Biden doesn't really think she needs to show up. Here he is with Lester Holt. Take a listen.
Do you have confidence in the Secret Service? Do you feel safe?
I feel safe with the Secret Service, but look, and you saw what we did see was the Secret Service who responded just arrived and responded.
And Lester Holt went on to ask, do you have confidence in the director? And President Biden responded, yes, I have confidence in him. Never mind,
right.
It's a she.
Right.
What does that tell you?
Well, he's out on left field. I mean, he's not conscious. He does not know what's going on. It's very clear. I don't even know if he knows he's president right now. I have
come on.
I'm serious.
Come on.
I'm dead serious. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know who he is or where he is. That's a fact.
Exactly. Look, there is valid criticisms, especially
he's picking between ice cream and applesauce. I mean, let's be real. I mean, this guy is not all there.
Hold on. Just help me out here. Go with me for a second. After Saturday, though, isn't this the whole point of lowering the temperature? Attack that he couldn't remember whether the Secret Service's director was a man or a woman. Attack those issues. But once you start saying the president doesn't know the difference between ice cream and applesauce, that's not lowering the temperature.
He works a few hours a day. I don't have confidence in him as a leader of our country to ensure the safety of Donald Trump. I just don't.
That's a different point.
An attempted assassination on Saturday night. How did this happen? How does Bobby Kennedy Jr. not have Secret Service detail after asking for it? And so it's just, we want to make sure that everyone running for president, Joe Biden included, that they are protected to the fullest extent that we can. Donald Trump included, Bobby Kennedy Jr., all of them should be protected. This shouldn't be happening in this country. And you're going to hear me tomorrow night. I don't even mention Joe Biden. I'm giving a speech that's going to unify the country. But it's a fair criticism to say that I don't think he knows where he is all the time. That's a factual statement.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Good to see you as always. Maybe hard to believe, but J.D. Vance will be the first veteran on a presidential ticket since John McCain back in 2008. Do Vance's foreign policy ideas actually make America safer? He will tell us yes tomorrow night. We'll check first tonight. All right, welcome back. You can see one of the Republican Senate candidates on the stage. This is the Republican Senate candidate for Virginia, running to be in the United States Senate tomorrow when Senator J.D. Vance takes the stage. He will talk a lot about being a veteran. That's part of his pitch. A man who signed up for the Marines is a way to get out of Appalachia. He's got a very different view after being in the Marines and serving of Ukraine than President Biden does. 54% of Americans disapprove of President Biden's handling on Ukraine. Vance takes isolationism to a different level.
We did not agree to a border fig leaf to send another $61 billion to Ukraine. These people with the Ukrainian flags in their bio are more obsessed with, they call it entitlement reform. But of course, what they're saying is that they want to cut Social Security for the people who paid into it for a generation so that we can send more money to Volodymyr Zelensky in Ukraine.
For you, as a Republican nominee. Armed Services Committee member, Alaskan Senator Dan Sullivan is here, a Marine himself. I almost said former Marine. I caught myself because there are no former Marines. You would have signed up in the party of Ronald Reagan, right? That was the call to service that you answered. This, and it's a populist Republican Party. How do you tell Americans it is not an isolationist now Republican Party?
Well, look, I actually just wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal directly addressing that question. And if you look at the Republican platform right now that we have here on the floor in Milwaukee, it is the party of peace through strength. That is in the platform. And by the way, that is very different from the Democrats. The Democrats, whenever they get into power, think about it, Carter, Clinton, Obama, and certainly Joe Biden cut defense spending, undermine readiness. That's happening with this administration. Shrinking the Army, shrinking the Navy.
I understand the point. I also understand that Reagan said, we will give you the money to fight the communists overseas so we don't have to fight them ourselves. It's great to have a strong American military. The problem is, I love this country so much. The problem is you might have to use it against Vladimir Putin, not?
Well, listen, like I said, look at the platform. Peace through strength.
Senator, I understand the platform. I also understand what J.D. Vance is saying. That's different than the platform.
Well, I mean, but J.D. Vance and the Republicans are very focused on rebuilding our military. And here's something else, Leland, it's really important. That includes rebuilding the industrial base of our economy, particularly our military industrial base, which is dramatically atrophied, right? Our ability to build, for example, Navy ships is really problematic.
You get no argument on all of those points, but still, there is now an isolationist wing in the Republican Party, led now by, I think, the vice presidential nominee. How does that not terrify people who understand what isolationist policy does?
Well, look, I think it's I don't agree with that assessment that we have an isolationist wing in the Republican Party. What I would say is where we did have a dispute on the national security supplemental, a lot of that was driven by the Biden administration's policies, the open border, the fact that they're not in it to win it on Ukraine. Heck, I met with President Zelensky just 2 weeks ago. They're still waiting, for F-16s. I directly talked to the president of Ukraine about that.
That's not something J.D. Vance wants to give them, though.
No, what I'm saying is that the reason you've had this national security, some of the split on that bill, is that a lot of the Republicans aren't, it's not that they're isolationists, it's just that they're saying that the Biden administration's policies, whether it's an open border, whether it's the anti-energy policies, are something that's undermining that whole effort. So very different from a kind of growing isolation, very different.
All right, fair enough. Senator, we appreciate it. Congratulations on your retirement, by the way.
Thank you, Leland.
It's good to see you. Enjoy the rest of the convention. We are going to be back starting in 2 hours from now for the primetime speeches. Those include Marco Rubio live here from Milwaukee, coverage with Chris and then Dan of some of the speeches, including Nikki Haley coming your way, and a little bit of those thoughts on whether there's irrational exuberance, to quote our friend George Will, here among the Republicans. Here's Chris in New York.